is Fiona and I'm an alcoholic. I'm also a daughter, a sister, a friend, an employee. I couldn't say that 5 years ago. My story goes like this. I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa, to an Italian mother and a British father. And by the time I was 6 years old, I bounced around 5 different places, eventually landing in Los Angeles. And my parents enrolled me in a little school, little private school, and I remember arriving there with my little wool kilt on and a wool sweater and a bowl haircut and a paper bag. And I remembered it was that moment that I felt different. It was that moment that I felt different on the outside, and years later I realized I felt different on the inside. I remember in retrospect, being young and thinking to myself, what do I have to do to fit in here? I never felt like I fit in. I never felt like I was going to be accepted. The disease for me is not just about drugs and alcohol. The disease for me is not enough. I don't feel enough, and I can't get enough. The disease is a disease of insatiability. There is no satiating me. I remember searching for coping mechanisms at a really young age. When I was 8 years old, my parents divorced. When I was 10 years old, my father moved to Australia. And Mom was sort of checked out at the time, emotionally. Dad was clearly physically absent and emotionally absent. And I remember, and it's not until years later where I've done a lot of work, both in a 12-step program and therapeutically, that I realized that I was left to sort of fend for myself. Mom, she provided shelter, she provided food, but emotionally she was checked out, and I was sort of left to fend for myself. I have a brother, and at the time I don't think either one of us realized how much pain we were in and what to do with it. We fought a lot. We fought all the time. And I just remember being riddled with feelings, but not really having anywhere to go with them, riddled with feelings that I didn't know what to do with. And I remember I was searching for a way out, just a way out of being so uncomfortable in my own skin. I remember at age 10, I was so uncomfortable in my own skin. At the time, I had not yet discovered drugs and alcohol. I remember comforting myself with food. I was an angry little girl. I didn't know that then, but I was an angry little girl. By the time I was 13 years old, the truth is I never wanted or needed for anything, but I felt like I never had enough. And I had friends at school. It wasn't that I was socially void, but I always felt alone. It didn't matter how many friends I had. And the truth is that the more friends I had, the more people I had to compare myself to. The more friends I had, the more people I had to look at and think to myself, well, I don't have what they have. And again, the truth is that I had everything I wanted and needed. It wasn't about that. It was about the inside. It was about feeling as though I was going without on the inside. But I didn't understand that then. I had nothing to reflect upon other than what was going on outside of me. I really needed to check out. That's all I wanted to do, was check out. 13 years old, a lot of my friends started having bar and bat mitzvahs. And I was at a bat mitzvah on the beach, and at the time parents weren't aware of what was going on with adolescents. There wasn't a big drug awareness. Certainly youth rehabs they probably existed, but they weren't as prevalent as they are now. And parents were kind of clueless. They sort of had their heads in the clouds. And I remember there was an open bar at the time, bar and bat mitzvahs, free-flowing alcohol, open bars, you could get whatever you wanted, and I spotted a bottle on the bar, and it was a bottle of Jack Daniels. I grabbed it, I crawled under the tent by myself, and I drank it on the beach. And it's not that I had some burning bush experience, but I remember feeling like, this is it. I have found my solution. Whatever it was I was searching for, I found it in that bottle. and it's not that it tasted good, it's not that it was like, oh, the warmness down my throat, it didn't taste good at all, but the bottom line is it was my solution. All of a sudden I was numb. I was numb to what was going on the inside. I didn't care what was going on the outside. It didn't matter anymore that I didn't have the same jeans that Mary had or the same sweater that Jane had. It didn't matter anymore. I'd found my solution, and my solution was drugs and alcohol. My solution was drugs and alcohol, but the truth is that my problem was much bigger than that. My problem was much bigger than drugs and alcohol. They talk about drugs and alcohol being only 5% of the problem, and once you get rid of that, it's like an onion. It's a multi-layered onion. And I had zero concept of that at the time, obviously, because I was young and, unaware. It's not that I necessarily lacked insight, but I just need to get out. I was so uncomfortable in my skin, and you'll hear me say that over and over because I resonate with that. I was so uncomfortable in my skin. If I could have unzipped and stepped out of my body, I would have done that. Once I found my solution, I kept going. I kept going through junior high and high school, and they say that the disease of alcoholism is progressive. I had no concept of that at the time. I had no concept that I was slowly in the grips of something progressive. It was sort of experimental. I was, drinking. I started to smoke marijuana on a daily basis, and all the while, all that it was doing for me was building a wall. It was building a wall because the truth is that I was fragile, broken, and sensitive, and I didn't want anyone to know it because I didn't feel safe or protected at the time. My mom did the best she could do. My father is who he is, but I didn't feel safe or protected. And so I needed that wall. I needed people to stay away from me because I was uncomfortable with intimacy. I was uncomfortable with vulnerability. And I needed, it was a survival mechanism for me, 100%. It was a survival mechanism for me. And my use escalated through high school. I was experimenting with cocaine, and I managed to graduate high school and went away to college. And, all the while, in adolescence, in that period of time, the kids are trying to sort of create who they are, and figure out who they are. I had no clue. I didn't know who I was, nor did I really want to know. I wanted to be anybody but me, and I went through these sort of like identity crisis, whether it was, I didn't know if I wanted to be emo, I didn't know if I wanted to be punk rock, I didn't know if I wanted to be a gangster, a hippie, a this or that. So I went through these sort of like metamorphoses over and over, trying to figure out who I was and assume some kind of identity and adapt to whatever situation I was in. And I remember going away to college, and my use escalated, I went to school in Colorado at the University of Colorado at Boulder, and I started experimenting with acid and mushrooms, and I thought, oh, I'll just assume the life of a hippie and throw on some Birkenstocks and a Patagonia, and I talk about the disease being a disease of not enough for me. Not enough, what's attached to not enough for me is lying. I always felt like I had to lie to you. I had to lie to you to protect my coping mechanisms. I had to lie to you to make you think I was someone that I was not. I had to lie to you so you'd think I was cooler. If I had a pair of shoes on and they cost $50, I told you they were $300 because I thought that would make you like me more. When I went to school in Colorado, I had a snowboard in my room because I wanted people to think I snowboarded, when in actuality I ski. And I did that only because I thought that you would like me. I thought that you would like me. I thought I had to lie. It was anybody but me. There was no way you were going to accept me for me. It was a sad time, And again, at the time, I had no awareness of what was going on. I had no awareness that the disease had taken over.